buddy. No. No.
Okay, my name is Art Bastian. I'm the son-in-law to Joyce Radchenko, and the guy on the iPad is Trevor Yeaman, who is the grandson-in-law to Joyce Radchenko, my son-in-law. And what we want to do today is we want to check with Joyce. I'm going to call her Joyce today, and about her past. And so I'll start out and so what is your name?
Joyce Radchenko.
Joyce, what's your middle name?
Caroline.
Caroline. Okay. And where were you born?
Beaverdale, Saskatchewan.
And where is that?
Close to Yorkton, in southern Saskatchewan.
Okay. And what year was that?
1929,
And the day?
November 15.
Okay. And why did they choose to have you born in Yorkton area?
Because my parents lived at Luceland and there was no hospital at Luceland. So mother went to Yorkton to be with her parents and close to the Yorkton hospital. But I wasn't expected for a while, so she went out to Beaverdale to visit her sister, Bessie Caldwell, and while she was out on the farm, I arrived.
So you were born in the house?
Mm-hmm, in Aunt Bessie's house.
In Aunt Bessie's house, okay. So I just, your mother's name was?
Ada Maud Lindbergh. Her maiden name was Caldwell, married named Lindbergh.
Okay, and I have written down here that she was born in 1895, October 9th, and passed away in 1968, October 17th in North Alfred. And her mother was Martha Webb, and she was born in 1858 on April 26th and died in 1931. And her father was Joseph Caldwell, and he was born May the 18th, 1861, and died on September 14th, 1948. And did he have any siblings?
One brother came with him from England, Uncle Frank, and he had about 3 sisters who stayed in England.
And what place in England?
Knutsford.
Knutsford. Okay. So that's your, and your father's name was?
Fred Lindbergh.
Fred Lindbergh, okay. And where was he born?
Sweden.
Sweden, and he came to Canada, or no, he came to the U.S., did he?
Yes, to U.S. And then he joined the U.S. Army in the First World War. And after he was discharged, he came to Saskatchewan, came to Luceland, Saskatchewan.
Okay, and what did he have for siblings?
Oh, he had 6 brothers. And their names, I don't know. There's Oscar, Ike, Gus, Benjamin, and now I'm stuck. Alec. I don't know if I'm missing any or not, but he had 6 brothers.
Okay. So what do you have for siblings? Or what did you have for siblings?
I had 1 brother, Joseph, older than me.
And where was he born?
I probably Yorkton,
Yorkton.
but I really don't know.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so after you were born, what happened then?
Well, I stayed in Yorkton with Mum and family for about a month, and then came back to Luceland, and I grew up on the farm at Luceland.
Okay, and then you're from where did you go take your early school years?
Well, my country school named Harts Hill till about grade 7, grade 8. Well, we hadn't had a crop for years, so Mum went back teaching, and she taught at Four Corners, which is near Meadow Lake, Cock of the North School for grade 8. Then we went, so Mum and I were up there, Daddy and Joseph were on the farm at Luceland. Then Mum and I went back to Luceland, and the war broke out. Daddy joined the army, and in May, when I was in grade 9, we moved to Mum and went back teaching. Joe and I lived in Yorkton with her father. And so I took my high school in Yorkton, and then it was to Saskatoon I was going to get my teaching certificate.
Okay, and then where did you teach first?
Oh, my first school was at Loon Lake, Queen Valley, Loon Lake.
Tell the story about when you were in normal school and you went downtown shopping.
Oh, yes.
And you hadn't seen your dad?
Yes, I was going to normal school, and I never skipped class, but one day I decided to, some reason or other, I almost skipped class. I went down to Metropolitan to someplace shopping, and I had no idea where my father was, because he was in the Veterans Guard, and he used to accompany, he'd go to England to get a group of German prisoners of war and bring them to Canada to some camp, stay with him for a while, and then back to England. I never knew where he was. As far as I knew, he was in Europe someplace, so I was shopping in this store in Saskatoon, and I noticed a man standing beside me. Didn't pay much attention to him at all. But then when I looked up here, it was my father beside me. We were both very much surprised. Anyway, we had a little bit of a chat, then he went off to wherever he was going, and I went.
So the only time she skipped school, she met her dad, who was enlisted in the army overseas.
Yes, I think God has his timing to get us together at the time. That was one wartime, good wartime experience.
So, Grandma, what led you to teaching? Was it just an era thing, or was it a passion? Was it
No,
something in your life?
no. I graduated from grade 12. Had to do something. I had no. Well, I had to do something, and teaching was. They needed teaching. They needed teachers because a lot of the teachers joined up, and Saskatchewan was short of teachers. They needed teachers, and easiest thing to do. And seeing there was a shortage of teachers, and I went to normal school, everybody, the whole class was there for 6 weeks, and half of us went out teaching and half stayed until February. Then we reversed, the other half came back, and so by February I was teaching at Loon Lake. And I learned more about teaching by teaching than I ever did at normal school.
So how old were you when you taught the first time?
Oh, I think I was 17.
17.
And my students were just about as old as I was. An interesting challenge. I had over 30 of them.
Okay, so you taught at Loon Lake, and then where did you go?
Next year, I think I taught at Beaverdale. I boarded with Aunt Bessie and taught at Rockydale School at Beaverdale. Then I taught at Hudson Bay for a year, and then my next school was at Belgeny at Beaver Creek, and then I got married and
But
didn't move around anymore.
But tell
where did you stay when you taught school in Hudson Bay?
Oh, Hudson Bay, I stayed, well, all the time I had a room with a farm family, but I stayed with the Bennetts. I had a mile and a half from school, and it was in the middle of the woods, no telephone. Once a week, the neighbors would get the mail from Irwood was my address. Neighbors would get the mail, and I'd go over there for supper after school and get the mail and walk home through the woods.
So where was the place where they had the chicken ranch?
Oh, I forgot my chicken ranch. That was me after I got through high school. I got through high school at the end of June, and then normal school didn't start till September. So I spent 6 weeks at a chicken ranch at Belcaris. That was an interesting episode too. 1,000 Plymouth Rocks, I can still smell them. But it was a good experience working as a hired hand. I learned a lot about people as well as about chickens.
And what was the food like?
Well, my boss's mother was the cook, and she was very economical, never wasted anything. And one thing I learned, I was, for some reason or other, whenever a hen died, I was supposed to write in the book why hen number so died. And I didn't always know why a hen died. I remember one day a hen plopped over and was dead. So I took it to my boss, asked her what happened to this hen, why did it die? And she told me, oh, it wasn't sick, it just had a heart attack. We'll have it for supper. So we had the hen for supper. And I learned very quickly, I always knew why a hen died. I never again took a hen to my boss to ask why it died. I knew why it died. Because I wasn't going to have that hen for supper. I was a quick learner at that time anyway.
So did the hen taste different than the chicken, Grandma?
Well, I was hungry as I ate it, and they were very economical, but they were good, friendly enough, nice enough. But one thing I learned, I was just a hired help. And when they had company, they never introduced me. I was just a piece of the furniture. So I did learn wherever rest of my life, hired help is just as important as anybody else. You include them in the conversation and introduce them. So I learned a few things there.
You were talking about the plates too. Was that there?
Plates?
Yeah, about they never cleaned the plates in between the people eating.
Oh, that was no, that was at Meadow Lake. I was visiting. I guess I was the teacher visiting among the kids, and this was a large family that didn't. Where their ideas of hygiene weren't the same as mine, and their custom was the first batch of kids would eat their meal, then take off wherever. The second batch would sit down and eat off the same plates. Well, I was visiting them. I was with the second batch of people to sit down. And somehow, I can usually eat any place, anything, but I could not force myself to eat off somebody else's plate. I just wasn't hungry, thank you. So my hostess took the dirty plate and washed it and gave me a clean plate to eat from. I can usually manage eating anything, any place, but that was a bit beyond me. But it was their custom, and so be it for them, but it wasn't my way of doing things.
So what impact did your mother have on your spirituality?
Well, we grew up with on Bible stories and Sunday school and stuff. We always, well, I don't know if we were born Christians or not, but we just grew up with the Christian faith. And Mom always made the effort. She was busy as a farmer's wife, but between supper and bedtime was the time to play with us and read to us, and nothing ever interfered with that. That was her time till she got us off to bed. So that was we grew up knowing all the Bible stories, and then in the summer when we went to Daily Vacation Bible School, I camp under the Missionary Alliance as soon as we were old enough to be away from home.
Did your mother being a teacher have any effect on you becoming a teacher?
Not really. Just I was a teacher because it was the easiest thing to. Well, I guess my mom sort of decided for me that this was money was limited, but Mom was teaching, and she would pay for 1 year.
So
she would pay
you.
for my schooling.
Mm-hmm.
So she was the one who really decided that I should be a teacher, and well, I had to do something, so I thought I went along with it. But I enjoyed teaching. But well, it was in those days. Women were either teachers, nurses, or stenographers. Really, the 3 jobs available to us. So I picked teaching.
So, Grandma, it's 2022 today. The wage of a teacher is different than it was in your day. What would you have made as a teacher?
$1,000 a year. And it was, or was it 1,100? But room and board was just $1 a day. So it wasn't a rich, But it was better than in my mother's day. Often teachers just weren't paid at all. They just got a place to live. They got room and board, and sometimes some got no salary. The school districts didn't have it. But it was $1,000 a year. At the chicken ranch, I got $1 a day, from sunrise to sundown.
So you had two. Did you have two different jobs at that time, or was that a different time? And you did the chicken.
I did the chicken between high school and normal school.
Okay.
Just 6 weeks in there. I got $1 a day, which is kept me going.
And then talk about your mother becoming a chiropractor.
Oh yeah, my mother was a chiropractor. Well, after her high school, that's down in Davenport, and she was a chiropractic doctor. But she didn't. She found it too difficult to work as a doctor. Women doctors were not accepted in the. This would be about 1920. It was just too difficult to establish a office as a doctor. So she took her teaching education and went to teaching, and let her chiropractic license lapse. But she would help the neighbors who would come if they needed help. But so she was a chiropractic doctor, but teaching was more acceptable for women in that age.
So you used to have a friend come and see you from Yorkton.
Alexandra.
Yeah. Now so she was a lifelong friend.
Yes, I met her, well, when I went to Yorkton when I was in grade 9 and boarded with my grandparents. She was the neighbor's daughter, and very active in the Salvation Army, so that's how I got connected with the Salvation Army through her. But she was Alexandria. That's how I got connected with the Army, and she was a lifelong friend. But one time she came to visit, though. No, Alexandria was nice, but she had a few social problems. So one summer, after we retired and we were living in North Battleford, I had gone with a friend to Lutheran Bible Camp for a week. And I had a sort of a feeling when I was going, something was going to happen. Anyway, when I was away at Bible camp, the next day Alec got a phone call. Alexandria was at the bus depot. She was paying me a surprise visit. So Alec was, so he had the job of entertaining Alexandria until I got home. When I got back and found Alexandria and Alec had spent several days together, it amused me, but Alexandria had a wonderful time. I think this was the only time in her life she was ever alone with a man for any length of time. Well, Alec was exceedingly embarrassed. He'd had an awful time entertaining her, and he was afraid I'd be horrified, but I was amused at the situation, and Alexandra was very happy. She had had a wonderful week, and poor Alec had had a miserable time of it. She was a nice lady, but hard for Alec to entertain for a week.
So you said you taught, you didn't teach in Belginia, you taught at Belde Creek, is that right?
Belginia was the elevator where Alec took the grain to Belginia. Beyond the Creek, it was known as Red Pheasant when I went there, but there were too many red pheasants. I had the Red Pheasant White School, there was the Red Pheasant Indian Reserve, there was the Red Pheasant Indian School, and there was a lot of confusion, too many red pheasants. So they had a meeting, they were going to change the name from Red Pheasant to something or other, to whatever it was. They chose Beyond the Creek. The school was beside the creek, BLD, BJELDE, because there was a bachelor. Ole BLD had donated the land with the school site. He had donated that land, so that's where they got the BLD and the creek, because there was a creek there.
Tell them how you met Dad.
Yes. The first time we met, we didn't. Mom had been teaching on the Red Pheasant Reserve, and I had been visiting my mother for the Christmas holidays, and I decided I was going out skiing for the afternoon. So I was skiing along this little trail, quite happy, and it came to a bend of the road. And then at the bend, here was this farmer coming along with a load of hay. And I come around the corridor, I scare the horses, and the horses shy, and they almost tipped the hay over. That farmer was not happy with this stupid woman who would go out skiing with a red outfit and scare his horses. So he said he was not didn't like that woman. That was the first meeting. The second meeting, I was teaching a Red Pheasant School on the north side of the reserve, and I would ride a horse to school. Well, weekends I'd spend with my parents. I'd ride the horse across the reserve, and but my horse and I were not getting on. This was a new horse. It was big, and it was strong, and it did not like me. I was not a good rider. So I was riding to school. The horse was running away. I finally got the under control, got the horse to control. Along comes this farmer with a red truck. He honks the horn at me. My horse jumps into the air and takes off galloping again, and my horse goes dashing down the road and around the corner, past the school. And all the kids were lined up by the school waving and shouting, "Goodbye, teacher," as I went by. But a mile down the road, I got the horse under control. I finally came back. Kids were disappointed to see me, but so that was our second meeting. So I was asking the kids, what farmer around here drives a red truck? Well, it was Joyce Radchenko who drove the red truck. I was not happy. Any happier with Joyce Radchenko than he was with that woman who went skiing on the reserve. So that's how we met. We were married a year later. Well, our first date was at Halloween, end of October in 49, and then we were married October 28th in 50, so we dated for off and on for a year.
It sounds interesting, Grandma, that your first date was Halloween, and your first two encounters were scaring one another.
Yes.
Tell about the time you went to visit your parents, and then you stopped to visit a friend in the reserve, or you had to cross the reserve.
Yes. The school I taught was on the north side of the reserve, and my parents had the store on the south side of the reserve. And
Was that Red Pheasant store?
Red Pheasant store, south of the reserve. I taught Red Pheasant School, north of the reserve. In the middle of the reserve was a Red Pheasant Indian school, And I knew the couple that lived there, so this would be Sunday afternoon. I was driving home from Red Pheasant store to Red Pheasant. I was driving across the reserve.
On your horse.
On my horse, yes. So I stopped at the school, tied my horse up, went inside for a cup of tea. When I came out, my horse was gone. So I had no choice but to walk from my road north, it'd be about 10 miles. I had to trudge along there. So I was walking across the reserve. I almost got to the end of the reserve when I met two of my students, or a student and a brother, teenage boys. They were my students. Oh, they were so glad to see me. Oh, they were so happy. Well, okay, you came like your teacher and be glad to see me, but they didn't have to be quite that happy and exuberant. And it turned out they had been out shooting birds and gophers, I guess. And anyway, they had just fired a few shots, and along came my horse with no rider. Yikes, yes, they had figured they had shot the teacher. So they had come along the road looking for my body by the side of the road.
No wonder they were so happy.
No wonder they were so happy. They hadn't shot the teacher. I thought they would just like me, but it wasn't that. Oh yes, when Alec and I were dating, first time I was spending the weekend with my parents at Red Pheasant store, and he didn't know too much about my family. They were Mom and Dad, but Mom's sister and brother were living with him. That's Aunt Edie and Uncle George. And Uncle George was, I didn't explain to him, to Alec, that Uncle George had been brain injured as a child. So he was a big adult, 5'8", 200 pounds, he was a big husky guy. His language was very limited. He would repeat one sentence over and over and over again, which was, "Go home now." And so Alec comes to visit me, knocks at the door, and George opens the door and says, "Go home now." And, well, Alec evidently didn't go home now. But he was a bit puzzled for a while that my uncle greeted him like that. But Alec got used to my family eventually. But that was his introduction.
So where did you live after you were married?
On the farm.
What farm?
At Beyond Creek, a Red Pheasant.
At Alec's farm.
Yeah, so Alec bought the farm from his parents. Yeah.
For a while they lived with you too?
No, they had got a house in Saskatoon.
They
had moved. They used to spend weekends and come visit quite a bit, but they had a house in Saskatoon. So I taught the first year. We were married in October. So I finished the year, and then I went to, when Viv was about a year old, I taught for a year. But I found out I couldn't teach and be a mother and do everything, so I didn't teach anymore.
Okay, so when was your first child born?
Viv, December the 12th. 52?
51.
51?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the end of 51, yeah.
So, and she's got kind of a unique name.
Viviane,
Yeah.
With the capital A in the middle. Well, I had gone to school with a Vivian Fisher, who was a sister to the Fisher Drugstore Company here in North Battleford. That was her brother who owned the Fisher Drugstore.
Oh, yeah.
And she was just my classmate in grade 12. So I called her Vivian, and I found out afterwards, well, Alec never objected to the name, he liked it, but my in-laws thought I was very inconsiderate because a lot of the Ukrainian Russian people have trouble pronouncing the letter V. So my in-laws, well, they didn't have trouble finding fault with me anyway, but that was one of the things that they didn't like. They liked the name Vivian, but they thought I was very thoughtless to pick a name like that.
And you found out about the in-laws, the Radchenkos. They were quite political.
Oh yes, Uncle Cecil
Dad's
was
brother.
Alex, my husband's brother, was making sure that I voted properly. The Radchenkos were always very, very strong NDP. So Cecil sits me down. Now, Joyce, there's an election coming up, and you know, husbands and wives must always vote the same way. Otherwise, they cancel each other's vote. Spouses must vote the same way, so the votes aren't counted. He gives me this lecture, and I listen, so then he gives me the same lecture the second time. And then his dear Uncle Cecil said, okay, Joyce, now just to make sure you understand it, repeat it to me so that I know you understand it. I said, that's simple. Next election, Alec has to vote Liberal. Cecil was not pleased. But about 10 years after that, though, well, Alec and I never discussed politics, really. It wasn't very high on our agenda. We had been visiting the neighbors. That would be the Smiths, and Alec and Mr. Bill Smith always got into a political argument. So when we played cards, and then we were having tea, and men were arguing. So Alec tells Bill, I can tell you something for sure. There's never been anything but an NDP vote out of the Radchenko household. And I told him, don't bet on it. And poor Alec, he almost died. It had never occurred to him that there was a traitor in the midst. And the Smiths got a big laugh out of it, but on the way home, Alec could cool down a bit. And he said, well, they're thinking it over. I'll let you vote Liberal if you want to. I said, thank you. At the end of the conversation, he and I never discussed politics. But it really hadn't occurred to him that there was a traitor in the midst. I think I usually voted NDP, but not all the time. I've got a malicious pleasure out of voting something else.
So there were three brothers out there, three Radchenko brothers.
Nick and Cecil and Alec.
Yeah, in the same
and
area.
John was in Candu.
And Candy.
And Sister Nettie in Saskatoon.
And Cecil, at one time, I guess, he raised turkeys.
Oh dear.
It's my favorite story.
You want my turkey story?
It's almost Thanksgiving, Grandma.
Okay, no getting around the turkey story. Okay. Yes, Cecil would, in the spring, he would buy 2,000 turkey poults. And, they were cute little things. And they'd spend the first, these 2,000 of them, in the barn under the heat lamps and running around in the straw. Then eventually they outgrew that. So Cecil had a great big pen. It must have been about 4 acres of grassland. And he had a high fence around, wire fence so high the turkeys couldn't fly over it. So it must have been 7 or 8 feet high, very high. And there was just one gate in and out of that pen, and it was always security locked. And this incident happened, it must have been late September, because Cecil sold the turkeys late September, early October, when they were full grown. Well, he and his family were going down to Moose Jaw to visit one of his daughters down there. Alec and I were doing the chores. And as we were driving up, he could hear those turkeys gobble, 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 gobble. Well, almost 2,000 of them, because a few had died, of course. And they were big. They were full grown. Yeah, the hens would be 15, 16 pounds, and gobblers would be over 20, great big husky things. So we drove into the yard, and Alec took off to the pasture. He'd bring the cows home. I could feed the turkeys. So, okay, I got 2 pails of feed, went to the gate, opened it. I remember putting the pails down, opening the gate, going in, setting the pails down, locking the gate security behind me, carrying these pails to the middle of the pasture, where the feeders were in the water trough. And as I was pouring the grain into the feeders, I sensed something was wrong, something was different. There were no gobbles. The turkeys were quiet. Instead of gobbling, there was sort of a thump, 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 thump that I realized was their feet as they were stamping on the ground, watching them, walking around. And the scratch, scratch, scratch that I recognized. Those gobblers were dragging their wings on the ground, stamping their feet, marching in a circle around the feeding trough, wondering what sort of a critter was invading their property. They were not angry or anything, they were curious. And it was just like a donut of huge turkeys, gobblers, circling around me like a donut. And I was in the middle, and that middle was getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Those turkeys were getting closer, and they were going to find out what I was made of. It was not a good situation. And I remember looking up across the feeder at a turkey gobbler. His face was about 2 feet away from mine, and he was shaking his head, and his eyes were beady and cold. And all I said was, "Oh my." And the next thing I knew, I was outside the pen looking in. And I stayed outside the pen looking in. No was I going back there again. And when Alec came with the cows, we traded jobs. I'd milk the cows. He could feed the turkeys. Okay. He would feed the turkeys. But where were the pails to carry the food? Turkey. Well, they were still in the middle of the turkey pen. And Alec was quite perturbed. When I came out, why hadn't I brought the pails with me? Well, I don't know. Whatever angelic force had brought me out of that pen, hadn't brought the pails. So I don't know. When I get to heaven, I'll have to ask the angel that brought me out. Why he brought the pails out. But that is my turkey story. And I think that God must have wanted me around there for some reason, because if I had stayed in that pen, it would have been a different result altogether. But that's my turkey story. But I don't know. Cecil never did believe that. Well, I was going to argue the point. I don't know what had happened. But no way. I had to have gone out. Well, how could I have? Those turkeys would have finished me off before I got 2 feet.
They were mean turkeys.
They were mean
Remember
turkeys.
the neighbor that always picked up water at Uncle Cecil's and he was scared of the dog? The dog
That was a rooster.
or was that a rooster?
Oh, yes. Cecil had a very mean leghorn rooster. And Cecil's house was on a little bit of a hill. You go down a little bit of a hill to where the chicken coop was, and this little bachelor came over. He was sort of a conceited little... anyway. And Cecil also had a big dog. And this little bachelor drove up, and he was just so glad he got past the dog. He was just prancing down towards the barn, so happy and proud of himself. He got
to get his water.
Yeah, whatever. And this little leghorn rooster came, flew and landed right on top of his head. It was rather an interesting situation, but just a change from being so happy. He made it. You know, yes, that was Cecil's rooster. Okay, any more questions?
Yeah, I got more questions. So you actually, you're quite a reader.
Yes, because I always did like to read, but when I was in high school in Yorkton, the wartime in the Canadian Air Force, that was a training base for the Air Force guys. And there were a lot of, Air Force men around, and a lot of my girlfriends at school used to date these fellas. And I had no adult supervision at all. But I had decided I would just, as a teenage girl, I'd be safer home studying into my books rather than the party scene with some of my girlfriends. Some of them had were dating the Air Force fellas, but I really didn't. I preferred books to maybe getting involved in something I didn't want to be involved in. But I always did read.
What you used to write a lot too. You used to write in the local paper.
The way I see it. Oh yeah.
The way I see it. And like how long did you do it? When did you start doing it?
Well, I must 15 years or so. I don't know. It's just the local news, and I did it till after we retired in town, and then I quit. But I had the way I see it. But just things that happened on the farm, and we had a little dog called Poochie, and often in my articles I would describe what Poochie was doing. So one day, even after we retired, I was downtown paying for something with a check, and the girl who took my check looked at it and read it, Joyce Radchenko. Oh, how's Poochie? Amusement.
So, what color was Poochie?
Oh, he was a little black wiener dog with a few white marks. And I was, after we retired in town, Poochie came with us. I was, every day I'd have to take Poochie out for a walk. And one day I was walking down the sidewalk. It was winter time because I had on a black coat with white scarf and gloves and stuff. And I was leading this fat little dog that was waddling behind me. And I noticed 2 city workers across the street looking at us and laughing. And I wondered what the joke was, and then I realized that they just thought it was funny. Here I was waddling along in my black and white outfit, leading a black and white dog that was waddling along. And I thought it was quite rude and nasty of them to laugh at me and my dear little dog. But that was Poochie. He was part of the family.
So what happened to Poochie?
Tell him when Poochie passed away.
Oh dear. Poochie was short and fat.
Short legs.
Short legs. And the kids used to say he was just the right size for a footstool. So when he died, we would get him and make a footstool out of him. And this was
Family joke.
what the family joke. Well, when Poochie did die, Karen was in town with 2 little boys, and the understanding was, if they ever wanted anything from my house, just come and take it. So Karen would sometimes come and take some bread or something out of my deep freeze. Well, I also had a fur coat, and I had heard in the summertime, to help preserve furs, just stick furs in your deep freeze. Be a good way to store them over the summer. So I had my fur coat in the deep freeze. Well, Karen comes along.
Well, Poochie passed.
Oh, yeah, Poochie died.
And you were very upset. So.
Oh, yes. Well, he was a member of the family who was gone. I was mourning his loss and everything, and Karen comes along.
Well, Poochie was put down at the vet's, and somebody took you for a drive in the country.
Yeah. Auntie Frances was here. I think she helped.
So you went for a drive.
Anyway, I wasn't around.
The house was empty.
The house was empty. Yeah, I was.
You were upset.
Yeah, so Karen comes along. She goes downstairs, reaches into the deep freeze and feels his fur. And she has fits. She comes screaming upstairs, grabs her kids and doesn't take anything. And I get a phone call. Mom, how could you? Oh, what did I do now? How could you? How could you? How could you? So I figured out that she had reached in, felt this fur, and figured it was just Poochie in the deep freeze.
Ready to make a footstool.
So she'd gone home in hysterics. Thought Poochie was in the deep freeze. It wasn't. It was just my fur coat. But that was our last laugh we had with Poochie. He was quite the dog. And Karen is quite the daughter. In some ways. Okay.
So you had, Dave was born in 1951,
Uh-huh.
and then
We adopted Karen in about 1960, I suppose, somewhere around the 60, and Colleen a couple years after that. So it's 3 daughters
you had 3
with
daughters.
Karen and Colleen.
And I would say, as a son-in-law, that you spend quite a bit of time with our girls. Our girls are Carla, Jackie, and Angela. And even their kids have traits that are probably could be tied back to grandma, as far as reading and doing different things. So it's and when's you said your birthday's in November 15th.
Mm-hmm.
So how old are you going to be?
Well, pretty soon I will be 93.
93. And you've had a few special birthdays, what, at 75? At the 90th?
Oh yes, the kids have had some birthday parties for me.
So you're quite involved with the church?
Yeah, so the Lutheran church, because out on the farm, the only church out there was Lutheran. And for a while, we came to the Foursquare in town. Well, my mum and Red Pheasant had gone to Candu Foursquare Church, and we had gone there, and we had connections. And Alec really liked the Chartiers, who were the pastors. And so we had connection with the Foursquare Church. Well, talking about my church connection, I am sort of, what I am, mongrel or... Anyway, I think you can find God in any church. The denomination really is not that important. Is at Lutheran. My father was Lutheran, being Swedish. He was confirmed Lutheran, but the only Lutheran church there was a German one. The service is all in German, so there's no use us attending that. So we attended the Alliance Church. The two lady pastors who lived in Denzel, but they had a little mission not in the Hartshill School, but then another one. So I had Alliance connection there. And then in Mum taught at Four Corners. It was a Mennonite community there. Half the kids were Mennonite. Then when at Yorkton, my girlfriend next door was Salvation Army, but there was a group of us girls, about 4 or 5 of us, from different denominations, used to chum around together, and we used to go to each other's churches, the Baptist, the Catholic, the Pentecostal, quite economical. Economic. A variety of churches. And when I was teaching, one of the first things I did, I made contact with the local churches. Some there was no church, but one at Yorkton, Beaverdale, there was a United Church I went to. At Hudson Bay, a third of my students were nothing. A third were, my landlord was apostolic, so I often went with him. But half my, good portion of my students were Jehovah's Witness. So I used to go to their services once in a while, which some of the neighbors didn't really think the teacher should be going to the Jehovah's. I get criticized for that a bit, but that really didn't bother me too much. And then when I get back to Beelder Creek, connection with the Foursquare and with the Lutheran, because Alex liked the Lutheran, so it was sort of a full circle. At Lutheran, I didn't like the Lutherans. They were Well, Joe and I were the only ones at school that weren't Lutheran, so we got, ostracized, left out of things because we didn't fit in with the rest of them. So my original impression of the Lutherans was not that great, and here now I'm one of them. So it's strange in a way how things work out, but it's not the denomination that counts, it's your relationship with God.
That's good. Grandma, I had a question for you. When your girls were young, how was Christ a part of your home? Did you go to church together? Did you have church together?
You mean when I was young, or?
No, when Viv and Karen and Colleen.
When we were young.
When my kids, Viv was raised basically Foursquare, and then when the other two came along, we went Foursquare for off and on. They were baptized they went to the Foursquare Bible Camp at Turtle Lake, and they were baptized there at Turtle Lake, but out at Boundary Creek, all their friends were being confirmed in the Lutheran Church, so the girls asked if they could be confirmed in the Lutheran Church too, because all the others were, so they were baptized in the Foursquare, but confirmed in the Lutheran Church. It was the basis for their. But I remember, I always told them a Bible story at night. I remember when Viv was little, I told her every night. I tell her Bible story and tuck her into bed, and she'd go to sleep peacefully. But the one night I tucked her, put her into bed. Oh, what Bible story do you want tonight? I want the story about Uncle. Well, Uncle, there's no story about Uncle in the Bible. Yes, there is. You told it to me the other night. You did tell me a story about Uncle. Well, so finally I had to think of what story, how did her uncle get in the Bible? And then I remembered I told her a story about Joseph going down to Egypt, and my brother's name is Joseph. But so I told her a story about Joseph again, but this time I did try to make it clear to her, this is not your uncle, this is a different Joseph. Mm-hmm.
Very good.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you have for hobbies?
Hobbies? Knitting, reading, watching TV.
And I've seen her do all three at the same time. Knit, read, and watch TV.
Yeah, people give me, I knit mitts to be given to schools that need mitts, or churches, or any organization that wants mitts. People give me lots of wool. People I don't know give me wool. In fact, I have been sorting through the wool that Carla and Trevor gave me a while ago. There's lots of nice, big, thick wool in there. I've been sorting through that bag lately that I got from Carla and Trevor.
So how many sets of mitts have you made, Grandma, do you think?
I have no idea. A couple thousand, I guess. I don't know.
So lots of kids have been blessed.
But now one of the teachers asked Viv if I would make socks, because a lot of the students evidently need socks. So I've been making, I don't put heels in them, I just make the spiral socks. And that goes faster than mitts. But I have a couple bags of them, so I'm back to mitts again. But there's a need for that. I'm making some adult ones too to give to the shelters in town too. They need adult mitts. So.
Well, it's amazing, Grandma, how you used to teach, and now what you're doing and making in your spare time is going right back into the school system and into kids' lives.
Oh, yeah.
A real blessing.
How's your health?
Oh, good. Well, I figure as long as God leads me down here, he'd better look after me a little bit. But once in a while I get a touch of something on it. I am sick, experienced something myself. I can't imagine what it is. There were a couple of nights ago, I had arthritis. I had to get up and take a couple of Advil, but I haven't feeling fine now. But thinking how God looks after my health, I had an object lesson at church, at Easter time, the Lutheran Church here, different people, you could have a little discussion or talk about something. So I had 3 drinking glasses. I had 2 paper ones and then a solid one, a glass one. And the idea being, as a human being in our body, mind, and spirit, all in one. So I was saying how one day I had been happily doing my housework, and my brother had phoned and said he was going to the hospital for some tests, but everything was okay. He said his daughter would phone next afternoon to say how things went. Okay, so the next day, in the morning, the phone rings. Well, Sonia wasn't going to phone till the afternoon. It was the wrong time. So I answered the phone, and it was Joe's daughter, and all she said was, "Bad news, Dad's gone." So that sort of squashed my my paper cup. Took a beating. So I phoned Viv and Karen. I had 2 words for them. All I told them was, "Joe's gone." So then shortly after that, Viv and Colleen came up with 1 word: suicide. So that, I guess then I squashed me a little bit. So we went to Joe's funeral, and Viv and I took me, and it was sunny in Battleford. When we got to Red Deer, it was raining, and they had the service, the interment before the funeral. So we go to the cemetery, and it was raining, so they had little umbrellas, but umbrellas, those little things don't protect you much. I got wet. And then you have the funeral, and you have a luncheon, and you have a drive back to North Battleford. So not surprising, a couple of days later, I'm coughing and not doing that great. And Viv and Colleen come tell me to take me to the hospital, to the emergency. When you know what the emergencies are like, sometimes you have a long wait in the emergency. So they hauled me off to the emergency, and there's no one there. I just zipped right through, which is fine. And the doctor said, looked at me, "Oh, could be pneumonia. You should be in the hospital. But there's no bed." He just looked, no bed. But he sent somebody to check just in case there was the check. Yeah, a bed had just turned up. So they whisked me in a wheelchair. Off I go to bed, and I am coughing. I have one of those hacking coughs. You cough all the time. So I go into this room, and I know that, I have the bed next to the door, but I know the other bed is occupied. Every bed in the hospital is occupied, and the curtain is pulled. So I spend the rest of the night coughing. and feeling sorry for the person in the next bed having to listen to me cough all night. So next morning, I'm prepared to apologize to my roommate. Out comes a little Frenchman from behind the curtain. So I apologize for keeping him awake. Didn't hear a thing. He said, I'm deaf. Don't hear a thing till I put my hearing aid in. So that our God is looking after me that much to give me a deaf roommate. I have nothing to worry about. So I made up my mind I'm going to be happy. And I'm going to think of 3 happy things that Joe and I had done together. And I was going to be happy. I had just made up my mind, and I hear down the hallway. And my intuition tells me, oh, here comes a psychiatrist to see how I'm getting on. And sure enough, it was a psychiatrist. She comes in and checks my name and sits beside me. Oh, Mrs. Rich. And now, I could have been, here I am in my 90s with pneumonia and traumatized and grieving and pneumonia, a couple other stuff. I could be a real bad case. She had come up to comfort this old traumatized woman who was having a rough time of it. So she sits down beside me and looks at me casually. And then she really looks at me. And it's just like you see in comics. People are surprised. The eyes pop wide open and the jaws drop. That's what she did. Her eyes popped wide open. She was astonished. Her jaw dropped. She looked me in the eye and all she said, 4 words again. Your eyes, they're happy. And she got up and ran out of the room and never came back again. I scared the psychiatrist. So, I had my 3 cups there. I smashed my body cup. It was pretty well smashed too. But you could not smash that spirit, your mind, body, and spirit. It was strong. I could pound it, and the glass one did not smash because my spirit wasn't broken. My body and mind might have been, but not my spirit with God's help. So that made a pretty little, a good little object lesson.
Well, it's very obvious that you really love Joe.
Yeah, I was thinking, growing up, well, we didn't have many games or anything, but we used to, of course, read the books around, but play cards or checkers or chess. But nothing like cards to learn how to learn your numbers, your addition. You play cribbage, or you got to be able to add and subtract. And so Joe was eventually the top bridge player in Red Deer for several years. But towards the end, he was quite rather disgraced. He was just second place, and he was quite. It bothered him that he was not top bridge player anymore, but he learned it in childhood, how to play bridge, and it wasn't my favorite game. But we grew up reading, playing cribbage. Oh, that's all?
Where do you live?
Where do I live?
Yeah.
1581 110th Street.
Oh, in a home.
In my own
Oh,
home.
your own home.
Yeah, I managed.
Yeah.
Well, Alec was a veteran, so the veterans pay for yard work and things like that. And when Alec was in River Heights too, they paid his expenses there. So there are advantages to that. And then I have a daughter and son-in-law in town here to take good care of me. And and Jason helps. Too, I have a good family. Good neighbors. I have a native neighbor who brings me over a lot of their bannock and stuff, and soups and stuff. She brings me their native food quite often.
And you have visitors.
I don't have many visitors.
I thought you did. Birds and...
Oh yeah. Yes, I keep I used to think my brother was foolish. My foolish brother used to keep a plate of dry cat food on his step all the time. And I thought that was a foolish thing to do, feed all the cats in the neighborhood. Now I'm doing the same thing. And I also have a feeder on the tree. Just put one dish of feed in the feeder, else they could, half an hour they'll have it empty. I used to keep it full, and I figured that they could go through a bag of food in a day. But I do feed the birds and the stray cats.
And you like animals.
Mm-hmm. As I was telling Viv the other day, Viv was going to kill a fly, and I was telling her, Uncle Joe used to catch the flies in a bottle and carry them outside, because flies have feelings too. Joe would not kill a fly. But I think he did that to help the fly also to bother the lady friend he had too, because the lady friend would have happily killed the flies, but Joe wouldn't let her, so he had an ulterior motive there. Joe had his own sense of humor that people didn't always appreciate or understand or something. And Joe also had a cat that would sit on the couch and touch the window, which would make girlfriend very perturbed, because she had just polished that window, and then the cat would stick its nose on the window. So he liked animals. He always had dogs until he couldn't look after a dog anymore. Then he had cats.
So who's your favorite grandson-in-law?
Well, you're the only one with a wife around yet.
No, grandson.
Grandson-in-law. I think a son-in-law.
No.
Grandson-in-law. Well, today it is evidently Trevor. Today. But ask me another day, I might have another answer. But I have to look twice to see if it's Trevor or
Tim.
Or Tim. Troy is, still, I wouldn't, I don't call you by name too often when you're together, because I'm not sure.
It's pretty complicated.
It is very complicated, but you can go through life without saying people's names.
That's true, Grandma. Very, very true.
Oh, I was just thinking the other way, talking about different churches and things. Well, I had a friend, when Karen and Les moved near Lethbridge, they were in a Mormon district. So I got a book from the library about Mormons, to brush up on their theology a bit. Now, Talissa has evidently married a Mormon gentleman. But I was thinking, the people come to my door, different religions, well, they will never learn the truth unless we share with them. So I have established quite a few friendships with Jehovah's Witness friends, but one day 2 Mormon gentlemen came. And they were evidently going to enlighten this old lady on theological matters. Okay, they could come in. But I said, no, on a stipulation. Oh, could they have a Bible study? Yes, you can have a Bible study, but it must be about the King James Bible, not about their Joseph Smith Bible. King James Bible, fine, but I wasn't interested in theirs. But okay, they agreed, and they came in, and they were talking away, always about Joseph, and then they were off several times. I had to wrong Joseph. The only Josephs were the Josephs that went to Egypt, or Mary's husband, Joseph. So that got them a little bit confused. But the night before, I think of God's timing in things, I had been reading, I think it's in Zechariah, about those two staves, grace and union, I think they're called. Anyway, wherever it is, has these two staves, and he puts them together to be one. Well, there could be different interpretations of what that means. But, northern, east, and south, here there's one where the Jews and Gentiles together as one. But, that's one of those things. But they have, the Joseph Smith Bible and the King James Bible will be put together as one. And no way will I ever agree to that. But just the night before, I had been reading this passage of scripture about these two staves being put together as one, so that they pulled this out. Their Bible is just as important as the King James Bible, and they have scripture to prove it. So they read this thing from Zechariah. But so God prepares us for what is ahead. But I think they haven't come back. They left and they never came back. But I just think the other day that, I might have been bewildered at what they were reading about. Anyway.
After 93 years of life, what is your outlook on life?
One day at a time, maybe 1 hour at a time, 1 minute at a time. You don't let yesterday or tomorrow spoil today. And I was just listening to some fella on TV the other day talking about the word kindness. The word kindness starts with a K-I-N, kin, your relatives. The basis of love and fellowship comes from your kin. So get on with your family and in-laws and extended family, whatever it is. But kindness starts with kin. That I hadn't thought of before, but it's. Don't we remember yesterday, and you try to don't feel guilty about it, but don't let yesterday or tomorrow spoil today, and you get through today. Either you get through it or you don't. If you get through it, you do. If you don't, well, be prepared.
So what would your comment be to people, whether it's relatives or friends, that watch this tape in the future?
Oh dear.
Oh dear. That's her comment.
Well, I have found my constant companion is God. When, our family was broken up, I was young when Mom went teaching, Dad was in the Army, my brother university. I was alone a lot of my life as far as physically. I had no one, but God was always there. Sometimes He is the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. And the shepherds there, if you are willing to acknowledge that He is there, and He will help you. And sometimes people will be surprised. Like the poor little psychiatrist, she was so surprised that my eyes were happy. You know, there was an inner happiness. She was came up to help a distraught old lady, and said she found somebody who was happy. And I never saw her again.
Anything else, Trevor?
I don't think so. I really do think, Grandma, that your life has been an incredible testimony. You've lived a very long time, and God has been very gracious with you, and you're very healthy, and your mind is very sharp. Your body is still strong. You've outlived some of your kids and some of your son-in-laws, and God is, as you said earlier on in this interview, that you hope God would take care of you if He's going to leave you on this earth a little longer. And there's no doubt that He's done that. He's been very gracious to you. And so when I look at you, I know when your grandkids look at you, when your great-grandkids look at you, that you're just a testimony of His grace and His love and His mercy. And your testimony will go on for generation after generation. You've been faithful to the Word of God. You've been faithful to serving Him all these years. And I was thinking of just this past week, we had the funeral of the Queen. And I know you have opinions about the Queen and that, but there are some wonderful things said about her life, and the one thing she was true to was her faith. And I can definitely say, I would see that in you as well, that you've been faithful to your faith. You've been faithful to your God, to your King.
Amen.
And the Queen was a pretty good lady, and we pray for her son and his wife. We told her to pray for those in authority. You don't have to agree with them, you don't have to like them, but you can pray for them.
That's right.
And that goes for our neighbors and politicians and whoever.
Son-in-laws.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, this has been a really great time, Grandma. This will be something that will live on forever. And I think even, we often don't know a whole lot about people's lives until we start asking questions. So, yeah, thanks for taking time to answer some questions and give people some insight. I think your great-grandkids particularly will love to sit and watch this someday.
Oh, that old lady, you mean to say she's my grandma? Good thing I won't be able to hear their comments.
Yeah, well, you know what? I wish they would have had an opportunity to meet Grandpa. He was quite the character as well, and very genuine. But they had the opportunity to meet you, and they'll have the opportunity to get to know you a little bit better when they watch this.
Well, thank you.